Hey everybody, it's Mr. Haskell, and I'm back with more things that you should know by being alive. And today I want to talk about the Ludlow Massacre. I want to be able to give you the context. I want to cover what happened. I also want to look at the role of Mother Jones, the outcomes of the Ludlow Massacre, and also the legacy. So let's go ahead and get things started here. So in the early 1900s, Colorado was one of the places that you could consider to be the center for coal mining. The coal mining industry was controlled by powerful companies like Colorado Fuel and Iron Company, which happened to be owned by the Rockefeller family. The coal miners in Colorado faced low pay, dangerous conditions, long hours, and then also they lived in company-owned towns with rent and store control. You may have heard the term the company store before, right? So we want to continue on here with the idea that while these workers lived under these conditions, there were groups doing their best to try to lift them up. And one of them was the United Mine Workers of America, the UMWA. And this union began organizing strikes, and they demanded better wages, of course, safer conditions as well, and the right to unionize. In September of 1913, around 11,000 miners went on strike in Colorado. Well, as recourse, the companies, evicted the miners from company housing and forced them to live in tent colonies near the mines, including one around Ludlow. The strike lasted through a harsh winter, with the miners and their families having to endure cold, hunger, and elevated tensions with the coal companies. I've done a video on Mother Jones, and you can always refer back to my profile and see her role. But Mother Jones, a miner's advocate, gets involved here. She was known as the miner's angel, and she came to Colorado in order to highlight what was going on and to support the miners. She organized rallies, she spoke to the press, and she was there to boost morale. She was arrested multiple times while in Colorado, and it drew natural attention to the plight of the miners and their families. And so her activism kept the strike in the public eye. Now, the companies, in turn, hired private detectives and also sought aid from the Colorado National Guard to begin an intimidation practice of the strikers. They wanted to strong arm them back into the mines. And so we saw things like armed patrols, machine gun placements aimed at the tent colonies, and then occasional raids and just general harassment of the miners. And occasionally you would have small skirmishes, small bouts of violence breaking out throughout the strike at various camps. On April 20th of 1914, the Colorado National Guard and company guards surrounded the Ludlow tent colony. And we end up with a day-long event that breaks out into violence. They have machine guns that begin to fire into the camp. Fires break out that start catching the tents, engulfing the tents. And by the end of the day, 21 people were killed, including women and 11 children who suffocated in a cellar beneath a burning tent. And that level of violence just was a shock to the nation. News of the massacre spread quickly. Labor groups, newspapers just condemned the violence against the miners. The UMWA and miners retaliated in what became known as the Colorado Coalfield War. And we had armed miners now fighting back against what they saw as the oppression. Eventually, the federal government gets involved, and federal troops are sent in to restore order. What was the outcome? Well, the strike eventually ended without immediate gains for the miners. However, the massacre did lead to public outrage against the Rockefellers and other industrialists of the age. It increased calls for labor reforms and especially child labor laws. The massacre became a symbol for workers' rights, to fight for workers' rights. The legacy of the Ludlow Massacre It exposed the brutal lengths that the coal companies would go to suppress unions, highlighted the need for labor protections, and it inspired future labor movements and also reforms. There's a monument now that stands in Ludlow, Colorado, honoring those who died fighting for dignity and justice. The Ludlow Massacre wasn't just about a strike. It was about families fighting for the right to live and to work with dignity, and overall, it ended up with the tragic cost of that struggle. If you learned something new, please leave a like, a comment, a share, a follow for more things that you should know by being alive. Because remembering Ludlow reminds us that rights are often won through sacrifice. Thanks for watching.